What if one night could destroy everything? 7 years of marriage, trust, routines, the warmth of home. But what if, in a single moment, your reality starts to crack? Subtle details, strange phrases, a phone that suddenly became more important to her than you. A regular evening turns into the first fracture, and then an avalanche. He just wanted to know the truth, but when it was revealed, it became clear there was no way back. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. The November air was sharp that evening, crisp enough to bite at my lungs with each breath. Sabrina had mentioned she'd be spending the night out with her friends, and I had no reason to doubt her. Left alone in the quiet house, I nursed a beer, flipping mindlessly through the television channels, the moving images barely registering in my mind. 7 years of marriage had made me intimately familiar with her routines, the little things, the unconscious habits that defined her. But something felt off that night. Her last message had been brief. Heading home soon. Love you. On the surface, the words were ordinary, unremarkable, yet there was a forced quality to them, an unnatural warmth that didn't sit right. Just past midnight, the sound of the door opening broke the silence. She entered with a soft laugh, her heels clicking against the hardwood. Her hair was slightly tousled, as if she had been caught in the wind, or someone's hands. Her cheeks were flushed, and a different scent clung to her, not the familiar perfume she always wore, but something heavier, deeper, masculine. I didn't say anything at first. I simply observed as she kicked off her heels, tossed her purse onto the counter, and let out a sigh, the kind of exhale that came from having an incredible time. "Good night?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She flashed a smile, too quick, too bright. "Yeah, it was fun." Her back was turned as she spoke, a subtle but telling move. "Just drinks and catching up, the usual." I nodded as if I believed her, but my gut twisted. I knew my wife, and something wasn't right. She curled up on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through messages, occasionally laughing at something on the screen. But there was a shift in the way she held it, closer to her chest, more guarded. I took a slow sip of my beer, suppressing the storm brewing inside me. No need to overreact, not yet. Better to watch, to wait, to let the truth surface in its own time. The days that followed were unremarkable on the surface. Sabrina moved through our routines with ease, smiling at my jokes, leaving soft kisses on my lips, texting me throughout the day just like always. But the unease in my gut never faded. Then, on Friday night, she mentioned she was going out again. "Another girls' night?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She nodded while fastening an earring. "Yeah, Arya and Chloe want to check out that new bar downtown." I studied her for a moment. She looked stunning, too stunning. A sleek black dress that I couldn't recall seeing in ages. Her hair styled in effortless waves, perfume lingering in the air just a bit stronger than usual. "All right," I said after a pause. "Enjoy yourself." She leaned in for a quick kiss, grabbed her purse, and glanced back at me. "Don't wait up." But I did. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was David, my best friend. "Hey man," I answered. He skipped the pleasantries. "Jeremy, listen, I'm at that bar Sabrina mentioned." I straightened. "Yeah, I know. She said she was out with the girls." David hesitated. "She is. But there are guys here too." A cold sensation crept through me. "What are you getting at?" "I've been watching her for a while. She's really close with one of them, laughing, touching his arm, hugging him. It looks bad, man." A hollow stillness settled over me. My grip tightened around the phone. "I'm coming." In seconds, I had my keys and was out the door. My knuckles turned white against the steering wheel as I drove, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Sabrina, my wife, with another man. Laughing, leaning in close, her hands grazing his arm. The mere thought sent a fire through my veins. But before I could reach the bar, my phone rang again. David. They're leaving. I exhaled sharply. Are you sure? Yeah. She and the group just got into an Uber. The guy she was with went with them. My fingers curled around the steering wheel until my nails dug into my palm. All right, thanks. By the time I reached the bar, the neon lights still flickered against the packed crowd, music thrumming through the air. David stood near the entrance, a nearly empty beer in his hand. Tell me everything, I demanded. He sighed. She wasn't all over him, but it wasn't just friendly either. She kept leaning in, laughing at everything he said, touching his arm. His eyes met mine, steady. It wasn't how a married woman acts, Jeremy. I didn't answer right away. I simply nodded, my mind absorbing the weight of it all. You good? David asked. I swallowed hard. Yeah. My voice was empty, hollow. But I wasn't okay. I drove home, my thoughts tangled in a storm of anger, suspicion, and that sinking feeling of betrayal. The hours crawled by. 1 o'clock, then 2, still no sign of Sabrina. Finally, the front door creaked open. She stepped inside, reeking of alcohol, her face flushed, her movements slow and careless. I rose to my feet and waited. Where were you? I asked, watching as she slid off her heels with practiced ease. I told you already. We went to that new bar downtown, she answered, her voice effortlessly casual. I narrowed my gaze. That's odd. I spoke to David earlier. He mentioned he was there too, but he didn't mention seeing you. For a split second, something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty, hesitation. But she recovered quickly. Oh, right. We actually stopped somewhere else afterward, she added, rubbing her temple like she was trying to piece together the timeline. Maybe we had already left by the time he arrived. I watched her closely. She was lying. It was evident in the way she avoided my eyes, the way her voice carried just a little too much ease. But I didn't call her out. Not yet. I simply nodded, letting the moment pass. Maybe, I murmured. She smiled, brushing past me toward the stairs, but as I watched her retreat, a knot tightened in my chest. This wasn't paranoia. Something was wrong, and I intended to find out exactly what. The next morning, Sabrina stood at the stove, humming softly as she flipped pancakes. The tune was light, effortless, completely at odds with the woman who had crawled into bed at 2 a.m. with an excuse that didn't quite add up. She moved around the kitchen as she always did after a night out, as if nothing was amiss. To anyone else, she looked like the picture of normalcy, but I knew better. Then her phone buzzed against the counter. She ignored it. That was unusual. Sabrina was always checking her phone, Instagram, group chats, emails. She never left a notification unanswered, even if it was out of sheer habit. But this time, she didn't even glance at the screen. She acted like she hadn't heard it at all. And that made my stomach tighten. Another vibration. My eyes flickered from her to the phone just as it lit up. A name appeared. Ryan. Someone I didn't know. My pulse quickened. Maybe it was innocent, a coworker, an old friend. But the same instinct that had nagged at me the night before whispered something different. Who's Ryan? I asked, my voice deliberately light as I nodded toward the phone. She barely looked up from the stove. Oh, just a guy from work. Marketing team. We were going over a campaign last week. Smooth. Too smooth. I nodded as if I accepted the explanation, but something about it didn't fit. Sabrina wasn't in marketing. She worked in finance. What campaign? Her phone buzzed again. I caught the slightest shift in her demeanor, the way her grip tightened around the spatula, the brief press of her lips together. A flicker of tension. She was hiding something. But she didn't reach for the phone. Instead, she carried on as if nothing was wrong, kissing me on the cheek before heading upstairs to shower, playing her role flawlessly. I waited until the water started running. Then, heart pounding, I picked up her phone. We never kept secrets. We knew each other's passcodes. There was no hesitation as I unlocked it. And in an instant, my world collapsed. Last night was perfect. I can still taste you. Pain stabbed through my chest as I scrolled, my vision blurring. Wish we had more time. I miss you already. Then the photos. Sabrina, sitting in a dimly lit restaurant, a wine glass in hand, leaning into a man I had never seen before. Laughing, smiling, radiating happiness. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment. The messages stretched back for months, longer than I wanted to believe. Hotel reservations, inside jokes, plans for future weekends, pet names whispered through text. My grip on the phone tightened with every message I read. This wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship. A second life built behind my back. The shower shut off. I inhaled sharply, forcing my hands to steady as I placed the phone exactly where I had found it, my fingers trembling slightly as I withdrew. Upstairs, I heard her moving, the floorboards creaking beneath her steps as she dressed, unaware that the web of lies she had spun so carefully had just unraveled. In a few minutes, she'd come downstairs, smiling, pretending, playing the part of the devoted wife, acting as if she hadn't just destroyed everything we had built. I gripped the edge of the table, grounding myself. This wasn't the moment to confront her. Not yet. The next morning, clarity settled over me. I had enough evidence to end this, but I wanted more. Something indisputable. Something she couldn't talk her way out of. I wasn't going to ask her for the truth. I was going to make sure she had no choice but to face it. That same day, I hired a private investigator. Someone discreet, professional. Someone who had seen this kind of betrayal more times than he could count. Follow her, I instructed. And then, I waited. I gather every piece of evidence. Photos, videos, receipts, anything that solidifies the truth. The investigator gave a curt nod. Give me a week. I didn't have to wait nearly that long. Sabrina made it almost too easy. By the third day, I had everything I needed. Pictures of her draped over Ryan outside a bar, their fingers laced as they disappeared into a hotel, undeniable proof of an overnight stay. The evidence wasn't just damning, it was irrefutable. Any pain I had once felt had long since hardened into something sharper, a cold, unwavering resolve. That same afternoon, I sat across from my lawyer. I laid out the evidence, each incriminating detail laid bare. My voice remained steady, devoid of hesitation. I wanted a divorce, on my terms. The house was mine, purchased before the marriage, placing it safely beyond her reach. With the right legal strategy, she wouldn't get a cent from me. My lawyer assured me there was nothing to fear. The paperwork was filed, the process set in motion. The only thing left to do was erase her from my life completely. That evening, Sabrina made her usual exit. Out with the girls, she said, slinging her purse over her shoulder, pressing a light kiss to my cheek as if nothing had changed. As if she hadn't been betraying me over and over again. The moment she stepped out, I made the call. The locksmith arrived within the hour. Change them all, I instructed. He complied without hesitation. By the time he finished, Sabrina was officially locked out. I went upstairs and methodically packed every last one of her belongings, clothes, shoes, makeup, jewelry, even those ridiculous scented candles she insisted on keeping everywhere. Once everything was neatly stacked by the door, I sat back and waited. At precisely 1:53 a.m. I heard it, the soft scrape of her key against the lock. A pause. Then the rattle of the handle, followed by a sharp knock, escalating into urgent pounding. And then her voice, confused and irritated. What the hell? I took my time reaching the door, finally opening it to meet her furious gaze. Jeremy, my key isn't working. Arms crossed, I met her eyes evenly. Yeah, because I changed the locks. She blinked, momentarily stunned. What? Wordlessly, I reached for the folder the investigator had compiled, flipping it open to reveal the damning images. Her and Ryan locked in an embrace, fingers entwined, vanishing into a hotel together. The color drained from her face. "Jeremy, we're done." My voice carried no emotion. "I know everything." She froze, eyes fixed on the evidence as if she could somehow will it out of existence. "Jeremy, this isn't what it looks like." A hollow laugh escaped me. Don't insult my intelligence. This has been going on for months. Lies, deception, sneaking around, coming home to me like nothing had changed." Her eyes glistened with fabricated tears. "Please, let's talk." I lifted a hand, cutting her off. "No, there's nothing left to discuss. You don't live here anymore." Her breath caught as I stepped aside, revealing the neatly packed suitcases by the door. "Take your things and go." Her lips parted, her breath uneven. "You can't just—" "I already filed for divorce," I interjected. "And this is just the beginning." That was when she broke. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, her voice quivering. "Jeremy, please, we can fix this." I shook my head. "No, you shattered this, and I'm done cleaning up the pieces." And then, I did the one thing she never expected. I lifted her bags and carried them outside without another word. She remained frozen in the doorway, watching in stunned silence as I placed them neatly on the porch. When I turned back, her face was ghostly pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Goodbye, Sabrina." Then, without a moment's hesitation, I shut the door in her face. The divorce was swift and merciless. Sabrina, of course, fought back. She played the remorseful wife, desperate to undo the damage. She sobbed in court, pleaded with my lawyer, flooded my phone with long, pitiful messages about how she still loved me. None of it mattered. I had proof. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment she thought she had hidden. My lawyer dismantled her feeble attempts at a defense with ruthless efficiency, leaving her with no ground to stand on. By the end, she walked away with exactly what she deserved. Nothing. The house, mine, the savings, untouched by her hands. And Ryan? She moved in with him almost immediately, as if he was truly worth the destruction of 7 years of marriage. But their relationship barely lasted 4 months. One day, without warning, he left her. No explanations, no drawn-out goodbyes, just gone. As for me, I never wasted another second mourning a life that had never truly been real. The house, the place where I had once built dreams, where I had spent sleepless nights waiting for her to return, became nothing more than a monument to deception and wasted love. So I sold it and left the city, eager for a fresh start. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened. The weight of betrayal no longer lingered, no longer whispered doubts into my mind in the quiet hours of the night. I no longer lay awake wondering where she was, who she was with, what new lie she would tell next. It was over, and damn, it felt good. This story has come to an end. Betrayal is a blow that changes a person forever. Trust, built over years, can shatter in an instant. But it's important to remember, pain is temporary, and truth sets you free. This story is not just about infidelity. It's a lesson in self-respect and boundaries. No one is obligated to endure lies and manipulation. Sometimes the strongest decision is not to fight for the past, but to choose yourself and move forward. Love should be genuine, and relationships should be honest. And if someone doesn't value that, they don't deserve to stay in your life. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. My name is Eric, and I learned in the most painful way that betrayal doesn't always wear a mask of malice. More often than not, it hides behind familiar eyes and a trusted smile. I built my life around loyalty and hard work, believing that if I gave everything I had, to my job, to my marriage, to the future I dreamed of, then eventually, the universe would respond in kind. For years, I truly believed it had. My career was thriving, I was married to a woman I adored, and the road ahead looked promising. I worked at one of the top firms in the financial world. While my coworkers shut their laptops and walked out at 5 sharp, I stayed behind, chasing ambition long into the night. I wasn't just working, I was shaping something lasting, something meaningful. After years of sacrifice, it felt like all that effort was finally about to pay off. The company's annual gala wasn't just a fancy evening, it was the event where futures were unveiled and careers took flight. Promotions weren't whispered in offices, they were declared front and center for all to witness. It was a night where reputations were cemented. And that year, I was a top contender for one of the most sought-after positions in the firm. It wasn't about the salary, not really. It was about acknowledgement, about proving that every all-nighter and skipped holiday had been worth it. Jolynn, my wife, the woman I had built my life with, was meant to be there to share that moment with me. We had been together for years. She wasn't just my partner. She was the one person I shared every corner of my life with. Never once had I doubted her devotion. Until that night. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. Golden chandeliers bathed the room in a soft, warm glow, the tables dressed in elegance, crystal stemware, shining silver, and an air of quiet opulence. Ambition hung in the air like perfume. I walked in, proud, my hand resting lightly at Jolynn's waist. This was the night everything could change, and she was by my side, exactly where I believed she belonged. Jolynn had always been captivating, but that evening she was on another level. Her black dress fit like a second skin, her hair fell in soft, deliberate waves, and her smile seemed to light up every corner of the room. People noticed, they always did. When she spoke, conversations slowed. When she laughed, heads turned. For the first stretch of the evening, everything felt exactly right. I introduced her to my colleagues, and as usual, she charmed everyone she met. She had a gift for making people feel important, seen. But then, something subtle shifted. A barely perceptible change. So small at first, I brushed it off. It began with a glance, a moment of eye contact I almost didn't register. But then I saw where her attention landed, or more accurately, on whom. Luke, my boss, the man who had built the company from the ground up, charismatic, razor-sharp, effortlessly influential. He didn't just lead, he embodied the firm's success. And Jolynn, she wasn't just looking at him, she was watching him like the rest of the room had vanished. Not a glance, a stare, focused, intent. And then Luke looked back. A sly smirk crept across his face, measured, unmistakably aware. He recognized the look she gave him, and he didn't shy away from it. He welcomed it. Something inside me clenched. Jolynn turned her attention away just as quickly, laughing lightly at someone else's comment, her tone breezy and bright. But moments later, her gaze drifted right back to him. I exhaled slowly, reaching for my drink, trying to convince myself it meant nothing, that I was being paranoid. I forced myself to engage in the chatter around me, smiling where expected, nodding at the right beats. But something felt off. It was like the room had gone cold, like I was no longer part of the scene but watching from the outside. Then, without realizing when it happened, I saw them together, standing side by side, talking, laughing. Jolynn leaned in ever so slightly, her hand brushing his sleeve in a way that could have seemed harmless, except to me. I gripped my glass a little tighter. The sounds of the party, music, voices, clinking glasses, blurred into background noise. All I could see was them. Luke leaned in as she spoke, his grin wide and genuine. And then she did something that made my stomach knot. She tucked her hair behind her ear, a tiny, habitual movement, one I knew all too well. Jolynn only did that when she was feeling shy, or when she was flirting. My jaw clenched. And then, for the first time that evening, our eyes met. Her expression faltered for just a second. A flicker of something she hadn't intended to show. Guilt. It was there, as brief as a flash of lightning. But I caught it. A crack in the facade. And then, just like that, it was gone. She smiled at me, as if nothing had happened, as if I was imagining things. But I wasn't. She stayed close to Luke for the rest of the evening. I did my best to act unaffected, to keep up appearances, to stay present. But I couldn't stop glancing over. She laughed too hard at his jokes. Her hand kept finding its way back to his arm, her fingers resting there a moment too long. And Luke? He leaned into it. He wasn't ignoring her attention. He was encouraging it. His hand brushed the small of her back, lightly, but unmistakably intimate. I wanted so badly to believe I was wrong, that I was misreading the situation, but the sinking feeling in my gut said otherwise. Then, at some point, Jolene reappeared beside me. Her touch on my arm was casual. "I have to take a call," she said, holding up her phone just enough for me to glimpse the screen. There was no name, just a number. Something didn't feel right. "Okay," I answered, careful to keep my voice steady. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek like everything was normal, and disappeared into the crowd. I watched her go, a strange dryness in my throat. 5 minutes passed. Luke vanished too. That's when the cold reality set in. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from the bar to the dance floor, then to the balcony beyond the glass doors. They weren't anywhere. That's when it struck me. I hadn't seen either of them for nearly 20 minutes. A tightness coiled in my chest. I placed my drink on a nearby table, hands balling into fists. I started moving, slipping between clusters of people, weaving through laughter, chatter, and thumping music. The sound faded as I stepped into a dimly lit hallway. Then, there it was. Faint laughter. Muffled, concealed. I froze, heart hammering. A low whisper followed, then a moan, quiet, but clear. My body went rigid, a cold rush spreading through my veins. I followed the sound, steadying my breath. One of the doors down the corridor was ajar, a sliver of warm light bleeding into the hall. I pulled out my phone, pressed record, and pushed the door gently open. That's when I saw them. Jolene, Luke. Her back pressed against the wall, his hands gripping her hips, her fingers tangled in the fabric of his suit. His lips trailed her neck. My stomach turned. They both froze, caught mid-motion. I didn't speak right away. The camera had already captured the scene. Then my voice cut through the air, calm and razor-sharp. "This is Jolene, my wife, and Luke, my boss. And this is what betrayal looks like happening just down the hall from where I stood." Jolene jumped back, eyes wide with panic. "Eric!" she stuttered, but I wasn't listening. Luke raised his hands, words fumbling from his lips. "Wait, man, this isn't—" He didn't finish. I slipped the phone into my pocket and drove my fist straight into his jaw. He stumbled backward, clutching his face in pain. I didn't give him time to recover. I grabbed his collar and dragged him through the hallway. I slammed the main doors open and shoved him into the middle of the party. The music and laughter still filled the room. But not for long. A hush spread like wildfire. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. I didn't hesitate. My voice rang out, cutting the silence in half. "Want to know who this guy is?" I looked around. "He's the one sleeping with my wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Faces shifted. Shock, confusion, pity. Jolene stood frozen in the doorway, color drained from her face. Luke wrestled free from my grip, his expression twisted in desperation. "Eric!" Jolene's voice cracked. I met her gaze with ice in mine. "It's over." I turned and walked away. No more words, nothing left to say. I didn't touch the radio as I drove. Just silence. The city lights blurred through the windshield, but my mind had never been clearer. My phone buzzed over and over. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. When I pulled into the driveway, I just sat there for a moment, staring at the house I once called home. It looked the same, but it wasn't. Now, it was only a facade, hollow walls, empty vows. Inside, I moved like a guest. I found a suitcase and started packing whatever I needed. There was no chance I'd sleep here again, not in that bed. The phone kept buzzing. I finally looked at the screen. 12 missed calls, all from Jolene. I could have shut it off, but I didn't. I let it ring, let her sit in that uncertainty, let the weight of her choices sink in. Just as I zipped the bag and reached for my keys, the front door slammed open. Jolene stood in the doorway, breathless, streaks of mascara tracing down her cheeks. Her chest heaved with ragged sobs. "Eric, please, just hear me out," she begged. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "There's nothing left to hear." I moved toward the door, but she caught my arm, her grip unsteady. "It was a mistake," she said, voice breaking. "It didn't mean anything. Don't throw us away over this." I turned to face her, eyes burning. "A mistake? You humiliated me. In front of people I work with, friends. And now you want to talk about saving our marriage?" Tears streamed down her face as she clung to my arm. "I love you," she whispered. I pulled free, her touch like fire on my skin. "You lost the right to say that," I said quietly. "You had a choice. You made it." Her face crumpled. She reached out again, desperation in her every movement. "Eric, please." "No." My voice was low and final. "We're done. I'm filing for divorce." The words struck her like a blow. She staggered, sobbing, broken. I didn't stay. No more pleading. No more apologies. I stepped out the door, her cries echoing behind me. That night, I drove to a hotel, checked in. The bed was stiff, the room bare. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open. Sleep never came. Only silence. And memories. The shock frozen on Jolene's face in the lounge. The way Luke's smile disappeared the moment our eyes met. Her desperate voice trailing behind me as I walked away. None of it held meaning anymore. The following morning, I got up, stood under a hot stream of water until my thoughts cleared, dressed, and went straight to the highest-rated divorce lawyer I could find. Sitting across from him, my jaw locked tight and fingers interlaced, I didn't waver. "I want a divorce," I said plainly, "and I want to make sure she walks away with as little as the law allows." He nodded once and flipped open a blank legal pad. "Leave it to me." With that process underway, my next move was clear: Luke. I walked into the office building with purpose, ignoring the casual hellos from colleagues as I headed straight to human resources. By the time the sun set, people would view me differently. I took a seat across from Peggy, head of HR, and slid my phone across her desk. "You'll want to watch this." I tapped play. Luke's image filled the screen, his arms wrapped around my wife. Peggy's posture stiffened as the footage unfolded. We said nothing while the clip ran. Jolene leaned into him, her body language giving everything away. A brief kiss followed, casual and familiar, ending any doubt. When it stopped, Peggy drew in a long breath, her lips tight. "This is serious." "There's more," I told her. "Luke's been abusing his position here for months. People have whispered about it, but nobody wanted to be the first to step up. I'm stepping up." She didn't hesitate. An internal investigation began the same day. Then the stories came out. Accounts from women who had been misled, pressured, deceived by Luke's empty promises of promotions and influence. By the end of the week, he was finished, fired, his reputation shattered. 2 days later, the divorce papers were delivered to Jolene. No warning, no phone call. Just the same kind of cold finality she'd given me when she chose someone else. I handed her an envelope instead of a goodbye. And that's when the messages began. "Please don't do this." "Eric, can we talk? I love you. I miss you." I read every one. but I never replied. A few days passed before I returned to the house, not out of nostalgia, but to collect a few personal things I hadn't grabbed before, items I didn't want to lose. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a sleek black car I didn't recognize parked out front. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. I got out slowly, instincts already firing. Inside, the house felt hollow. No TV, no voices, just thick, eerie silence, until I heard something. Faint noises from the hallway. My chest tightened. Then again, soft, unmistakable moans from the bedroom. I didn't stop. I walked straight down the hall and pushed open the door. There they were, Jolyn and Luke, twisted together in the bed that used to be ours. Time froze. Luke's face went pale, caught between speaking and saying nothing. Jolyn scrambled to grab the sheets, her eyes huge and panicked. "Eric," she whispered. But what I saw in her expression wasn't remorse, it was fear. She thought she'd gotten away with it, that I'd never know, that I'd keep living in the dark, still believing I mattered to her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then her face changed, hardened. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, irritation coloring her voice. I let out a short, joyless laugh, not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. That's what she had to say? No apology. No explanation. Just, "What are you doing here?" Like I was the intruder. I looked from her to Luke, then to the bed that no longer felt like anything of mine. I gave a slow shake of my head. "I made the right decision," I said softly, and turned away. No shouting, no dramatic outburst. I didn't need it. I had the clarity I came for. She had cried, she had begged, claimed she still loved me. And less than 2 days later, she invited him back, into our home, into that bed. That told me everything I needed to know. I closed the door behind me and never looked back. The weeks after that were all about starting fresh. I found a small apartment. No memories, no lies, just a blank page. Life got quieter, simpler. Work, gym, a drink here and there with friends who actually cared. Nothing chaotic, nothing fake. But it was mine. The divorce wrapped up quicker than expected. Jolyn didn't contest it. She kept the house and took a small part of my savings. I didn't fight it. Then, I heard something that nearly made me laugh. Luke dumped her. Didn't take long, maybe a couple months at most. He got what he came for. And when the novelty faded, he disappeared. Just like I always suspected he would. I can only imagine her face when it hit her, how she burned her life to the ground for someone who walked away like it meant nothing. Right on schedule, the final message came through. "Eric, please, can we talk?" There was a time when those words would have broken me, but not anymore. I stared at the screen. Then I erased the message, and I moved on, because not everything is worth saving. She said she'd be back in 2 weeks, just to think, just to live for herself. No tears, no drama, like she wasn't walking away from a family, but stepping out of a lunch meeting. But the moment she said another man's name, everything cracked. 16 years, one son, a shared past, all of it suddenly reduced to bargaining chips in her quest for clarity. He didn't yell, didn't beg. He listened, took note, and began to act. Quietly, precisely, cold as steel. While she was off finding herself, he was changing the locks, not on the door, but in his soul. Rewriting the ending, one where forgiveness was no longer on the table. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. I can still picture her across from me at the kitchen table, calm as if she were walking me through a recipe. No tears, no trembling, just words delivered like she'd rehearsed them. "I need some time, Ryan." She paused, said she needed a break. I blinked, not sure I heard correctly. "A break?" She gave a small nod, swirling her coffee like the motion might somehow erase the weight of what she was saying. Just a couple of weeks. I need time to think, she added, as if this was some routine bump in the road. People need time. Marriages have rough patches, but she wasn't done yet. There's someone else. And that was the moment it all shifted. I felt like I'd been hit in the chest, my breath gone in a second. I just stared at her. What are you saying? I managed, though the words barely formed. She stared down into her coffee like maybe the bottom of that mug held an answer. His name's Derek. We've been talking. It wasn't planned, it just happened. I stayed silent. I couldn't do anything else. My brain was chaos, and my body hadn't caught up. She kept talking, like she was giving me some kind of gentle goodbye. I'm not saying I'm leaving for good. I just need to be sure. Sure of what? I finally asked. I need clarity, she said softly. About him. About us. I owe myself that, and I owe it to you. I can't keep pretending. I need 2 weeks with him. No contact between us. After that, I'll come back and we can talk. I almost laughed at how insane it sounded. You want me to just sit here while you test drive someone else? She let out a sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Oh, my bad, I said sharply. Didn't mean to interfere with your little side project. I'm trying to be honest, she said, like that earned her some moral high ground. How noble of you, I muttered. Then she stood and said something I'd never forget. Don't be dramatic. It's just 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. She grabbed her keys and walked out, her bag already in the car like she'd choreographed the whole thing. I stayed at the kitchen table, eyes fixed on the mug she left behind. Half full, still warm. 2 weeks. I couldn't process it. She wasn't just leaving me. She was walking away from our 16-year-old son, Nolan, like she was postponing a dinner reservation. Like our life together was something she could hit pause on and resume later. But she didn't see what was coming. I wasn't going to wait. I wouldn't plead. I'd end it on my own terms. That first night, I barely spoke. I barely moved. Sat out on the porch with a beer, watching the street lamp buzz and flicker like it knew something I didn't. By the second night, I had a plan. I remembered Derek. Not personally, but I'd seen him once at one of Clara's work parties. One of those guys who acts like every room is his audience. Loud laugh, sunglasses indoors, the whole cliché. So I did what any man in my position might do. I started digging. And what I found? Derek came with enough red flags to decorate a stadium. 2 failed businesses, a pending lawsuit for stealing proprietary ideas, and he was living above a shuttered bar he used to co-own. This was Clara's maybe. I wasn't angry anymore. I was insulted. So I called Heather, my lawyer. She'd helped incorporate my company last year. She owed me. I need you to draft divorce papers, I told her. I'm not filing yet, just want them ready. You sure about this? She asked. She left to get clarity, I said. Now it's my turn. She didn't ask again. Next, I reached out to Alyssa, Clara's best friend, the one who always hinted I was too good for her. Figured you should hear it from me, I said. Clara left. She's spending 2 weeks with someone else. Says she's figuring things out. Silence. Then, you're kidding. I wish I were. She didn't say much after that. But later that night, I saw her post an Instagram story. White text on a black screen. Some people don't realize what they had until it's gone. Clara was tagged. That set the dominoes in motion, and I had no intention of stopping them. On the 3rd day of her so-called retreat, Clara sent a text. Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay. I stared at it for a while, then put the phone down. Hours later, I replied, Yeah, miss you. Hope you're finding what you need. She sent back a heart emoji. I actually laughed. She thought I was still here, waiting, holding on. And that's exactly what I wanted her to think. I kept it light, responded occasionally, just enough to soothe her conscience, let her believe the fantasy. Meanwhile, I was taking care of business, shifted most of the savings out of our joint account, left just enough not to raise suspicion, removed her from my emergency contacts, changed all the passwords, set up a second phone, and for the final move, I invited her parents over for dinner. They always liked me. Clara's father, Gavin, carried himself like someone misplaced in time, formal, inflexible, and the sort of man who communicated more with looks than language. Her mother, Harper, had a refined edge to her, the kind of grace that could slice clean through with a smile. Halfway through dinner, I delivered the truth like a dropped fork on porcelain. "She's gone," I said, easing my utensil onto the plate. "She left to be with someone else. Told me she'd be back in 2 weeks. Maybe." Gavin's jaw shifted, like he was grinding down granite. Harper's face lost its color entirely. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" she asked, as though she'd misheard or hoped she had. I said it again, clearly. She needed to find out what it felt like, to be sure. Gavin didn't respond. He just sat there, his fingers curled around a whiskey glass, staring into the wood grain of the table as though it might offer answers. Harper murmured, "Unbelievable," under her breath, repeating it like a sacred phrase. As they prepared to leave, she took my hand, squeezed it gently, and whispered, "You don't deserve this. Not any of it." I offered her a soft smile. "I know." Clara had chosen chaos. I chose resolve. She struck the match. I walked through the flames. Exactly 2 weeks later, to the hour, she came back. Not like someone returning from ruin, more like someone who'd stepped out for a walk. Her key still worked. She breezed in casually, left her bag by the entrance, and smiled as if everything had reset. "I'm home," she said, like I'd spent the past 14 days holding my breath. I was seated on the couch, watching a rerun of a show we used to love. I didn't even look her way. She hovered in the silence, probably expecting me to leap up, gather her in my arms, welcome her back. When nothing happened, she slowly walked over and perched on the arm of the sofa. "I've made a decision," she said, voice almost tender. I muted the television. That practiced smile crossed her lips, the one she wore when she had something difficult to say. "I'm choosing you," she said. Derek wasn't what I imagined. Being with him made me realize how solid we are. I had to be sure. Now I am. She reached for my shoulder. I pulled away. She blinked. "Ryan?" I stood, facing her directly, taking in a deep breath. "You took 2 weeks," I said quietly. "So did I." She gave a nervous little laugh. "I figured you'd be upset." "No," I said. "That's not what this is." I walked to the side table and picked up a thick cream envelope, her name carefully written across the front. She stared at it like it might explode. "What's that?" "Divorce papers." Her expression collapsed. Her hand shook as she took it from me. "You're divorcing me?" I nodded. "I already signed. Just needs yours now." She flipped through the pages, scanning as if a hidden clause or reprieve might appear. This can't be happening," she whispered. "It already is," I replied. "You've got 3 days to return them. After that, my lawyer takes it from there." Her voice cracked, wobbling with desperation. "But you texted me, said we could talk." "I did," I said evenly. "Gave you just what you gave me, a bit of hope, while I planned my way out." She stood frozen, the papers drooping in her grip like a verdict too heavy to bear. Her eyes welled, but what I saw wasn't sorrow. It was fear. "You're making this bigger than it is," she insisted. "This isn't unfixable. We can come back from this." I was confused, Ryan. I needed to be honest, that's all. I smiled, not from happiness, but because this was the exact moment I had steeled myself for. "You walked away," I said. "Packed a bag and left like our marriage was a lease, not a life." She stepped closer, her voice fraying. I made a mistake. No, I said firmly. You made a choice. There's a difference. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. You want to know what I did while you were gone? She said nothing. I moved our savings, removed my name from the car lease, canceled the joint card. The only reason you're standing here is because I left the locks alone. Thought you might want one last look at everything you threw away. You're just ending this? She whispered. I let out a short, bitter laugh. No, you ended it. I'm just clearing what's left. She glanced around like the room had shifted beneath her. Maybe now it looked foreign, smaller, emptier, colder. This is still my home, she said, her voice barely audible. No, I said. This was where we lived. The home disappeared the day you did. She clutched the papers tighter, as if pressure alone might squeeze out a different ending. Then, as if reaching for her last move, she said the one name she knew might cut through. What about Nolan? The name hit me square in the chest. Our son, 16, introspective, too wise for the world he'd grown up in. You think he doesn't already know? I said. I told him. You really think I was going to let him sit there confused, wondering why you disappeared for 2 weeks? Her face crumpled. You told him? Not every detail, I said. Just enough to make things clear. Just enough for him to see who stayed and who walked away. Tears filled Clara's eyes. He's going to hate me. That's something the two of you have to work out. She started crying then. Quiet, steady tears. But they weren't for me. They weren't about guilt either. They came from the loss of control, from watching the identity she clung to unravel. Clara had always seen herself as the one pursued, the one holding the cards. Now, all that power had turned to dust. She sat on the edge of the couch, eyes locked on the divorce papers like she couldn't read them. You're really not going to take me back? She asked, her voice barely audible. I met her gaze. No, Clara. You don't get to come back. Not after everything. Not now. She didn't leave that night. Took the guest room. Didn't say a word. I didn't check on her. Didn't ask if she was okay. She wasn't mine to worry about anymore. By morning, she was gone. She didn't take much. Just her small travel bag and the envelope with the papers I'd given her. 3 days to sign. That was Friday. Sunday, I opened my mailbox and found the signed documents inside. No note, no drama, just her name at the bottom, like someone finally accepting the truth. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, flipping through the pages. There was no rush of joy, no relief, nothing. And that, strangely enough, felt like freedom. No anger, no sadness, just finality. Later that day, Nolan came home. He'd stayed the weekend at Logan's place. I told him it was done. He nodded slowly, taking it in. Then came the question I knew would come. Do I have to see her? I paused. That's up to you, but you don't owe her anything. He looked down, quiet, then said, She didn't just leave you. And in that instant, I realized, it hadn't only been my heart she discarded. It was his too. We started putting things back together, one piece at a time. Quiet mornings, dinner on the patio, weekend trips to the lake with my brother's kids. Little by little, the house felt like home again. Our home. As for Clara, she tried rewriting the past. Alyssa mentioned she'd been reaching out to people we both knew, saying we just needed time apart, that maybe I'd acted too fast. But nobody was buying it. People talk. And Alyssa? She doesn't play nice with the truth. She wants everyone to think she's the victim, she told me over coffee one afternoon. But the thing is, you never tried to make her the villain. That's why they believe you. I smiled. I didn't need to get back at Clara. The truth did the job on its own. About a month after she'd signed, her name flashed on my phone. I was climbing into my truck, almost ignored it. But some small part of me wanted to know what she had left to say. Hello? She was already crying. Soft, shaky breaths on the line. I don't even know why I called, she said. "I just needed to hear your voice." I said nothing. "I messed up," she whispered. "I know I did. Derek wasn't who I thought he was. I left him, and now I don't even know who I am." She paused, waiting for reassurance, for mercy. I gave her neither. "I miss you, Ryan," she said. "I miss what we had. I miss us." I finally responded, "No, Clara. What you miss is the version of me who would have taken you back." Silence. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought for a moment. "No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore." Another pause. "I understand," she whispered. "I'm sorry." "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. Then I hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. A year later, I met someone new. Daphne. She's kind. She's real. She laughs like she means it and never makes me feel like I have to earn her love. Nolan likes her. That says everything. Clara? I hear little things now and then. She lives in a small place across town, works a job no one seems to know much about, goes out alone a lot. Her pictures online look like she's still chasing something that slipped through her fingers, still performing for an audience that already left. But me? I sleep just fine. Not because I got revenge, not because I won, because I didn't need to. Clara thought she held all the power the day she walked out. She thought I'd wait, just in case she wanted to come back. But I made a choice too, and that changed everything. In the end, she believed it was her decision, choosing between two men. What she never saw coming was that we had already chosen, and that's the ending she never expected. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Imagine you're preparing a surprise for your loved one. Every detail is carefully planned, the perfect dinner, candles, the atmosphere. You're waiting, burning with anticipation, but she doesn't come. She doesn't pick up the phone. And then you find out where she really is. Your world starts to fall apart. Lies, betrayal, secret meetings. You stare the truth in the face, and it is merciless. But what will you do next? Will you make a scene? Turn a blind eye to the betrayal? Or will you turn this game into a chess match where you have the final, decisive move? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. The course of my life veered sharply on the day I stumbled upon the devastating truth about my wife, Sophia. My name is Anthony, and never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be recounting such an agonizing experience. Yet, here I am, sharing my story, because I know I am not alone in facing such heartbreak. I had unwavering faith in my marriage, in the woman I had promised to stand beside for life. For nearly 10 years, I believed we had built something solid, something that could withstand any storm. But life has a cruel way of stripping away our most cherished illusions. After nearly a decade together, I was convinced I knew every facet of Sophia's heart. She delighted in thoughtful gestures, found joy in the smallest details, and I prided myself on anticipating the things that would bring her happiness. So, when her birthday approached, I resolved to make it unforgettable. Not just an ordinary dinner, but a truly special experience. I arranged everything meticulously. I cleared my schedule, took the day off work, and even hired a professional chef to prepare a spectacular meal. As the chef worked his magic in the kitchen, I carefully transformed our dining area, ensuring every element was distinct from a typical evening at home. My goal was to make it feel personal, intimate, a true tribute to her. In my mind, I could already see her reaction, the way her face would light up as she stepped inside, the way she would inhale the rich aroma of the meal, taking in the effort behind every detail. I imagined our eyes meeting, her expression a mix of warmth and astonishment, silently asking, "Did you really do all this for me?" I checked the clock. She was due home in less than an hour. Everything was set. What I didn't realize was that this night would shatter me in ways I never saw coming. An hour slipped by. Then another. Sophia was still nowhere to be found. That wasn't like her. She always returned by 6:30, sometimes 7 at the latest. I hesitated, debating whether to call her. I didn't want to ruin the surprise. Instead, I decided to check her location. From the beginning of our marriage, we had shared our phone locations for safety. But as I pulled up her whereabouts, my heart sank. She wasn't on her way home. She was at a restaurant downtown. My first instinct was to believe it was a spontaneous office celebration, a gesture from her colleagues. Still, I needed to be sure. I needed to confirm that she wasn't filling up on an impromptu meal when a carefully prepared dinner awaited her at home. Taking a deep breath, I dialed her number. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hey, babe," she said, her tone even, though slightly preoccupied. "Hey," I responded, forcing a casual tone. "Are you on your way home?" A pause, then a sigh. "Not yet," she admitted. "Work is insane today. I'm drowning in reports, and I'll probably be here late." My stomach twisted. She was lying. Her location was displayed clearly on my screen. She wasn't buried in reports at her desk. She was sitting in a restaurant, while I sat at home, waiting, the night I had planned so carefully unraveling before my eyes. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I forced out a chuckle. "No worries. I'll see you when you get home." The moment the call ended, I stood motionless, my mind a storm of thoughts. What was I supposed to do? Take her word at face value? Convince myself there was an innocent explanation? Every fiber of my being wanted to believe that she would call back and clear up the misunderstanding. But she didn't. The silence stretched on, heavy with unspoken truths. So I grabbed my keys and left. The drive to the restaurant felt excruciatingly long, though it was only a few miles away. My mind spun in frantic circles, clinging to any reasonable explanation. Maybe I was misinterpreting things. Maybe there was a logical reason for all this. But the moment I arrived, one look through the restaurant's large glass windows crushed whatever fragile hope I had been holding on to. There she was, seated at an intimate table set for two, and she wasn't alone. Opposite her sat a man I instantly recognized, her colleague, the one she had introduced me to at a company event months earlier. The way they leaned toward each other, the way they laughed softly, their eyes meeting with an unspoken connection, there was nothing casual about it. Even if this was just a friendly dinner, why would she lie about it? Her office wasn't anywhere near this restaurant. None of it made sense. The pieces didn't fit. And yet, the truth was unfolding before me, undeniable and cruel. I watched as she smiled, lost in a moment that belonged in a romance movie. Except this wasn't fiction. And I was the one being written out of the story. I needed proof. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, dialing her number while keeping my eyes on her. The device on the table in front of her lit up immediately. She glanced at the screen. For a fleeting second, I hoped she would answer. That she would pick up and offer an explanation that would make all of this disappear. But she didn't. Instead, she exhaled softly, silenced the call, and turned the phone face down, as if it were nothing more than an inconvenient distraction. Then she returned her full attention to him, smiling, completely absorbed in their conversation. Something inside me fractured beyond repair. I didn't barge in. I didn't create a scene. I simply lifted my phone, took a few quiet photos, and turned away. The drive home was a blur, a hollow silence wrapping around me. I felt empty, as though something fundamental had been ripped from me, leaving me unsure of how to even begin processing it. Once home, I sat in the dark, staring at nothing, my thoughts too chaotic to unravel. What was I supposed to do now? Confront her? Pretend I had seen nothing? The storm of emotions raging inside me was too overwhelming to face alone. I needed clarity. I needed someone who could cut through the fog of my emotions and help me see the truth for what it was. So, I picked up my phone and dialed the one person who had never sugarcoated reality. Flynn, my best friend since college. The second he answered, his voice was thick with concern. "Anthony? What's wrong?" I hesitated, struggling to find the words. But then, unable to hold it in any longer, I told him everything. Flynn hesitated briefly before releasing a heavy sigh. "I don't like being the bearer of bad news, but this doesn't look good," he admitted, his tone serious. Leaning forward slightly, his voice took on a sharper edge. "You can't just ignore this and hope it goes away. Before you make a move, you need to be absolutely certain about what's really happening." His words hit harder than I expected. Had this been going on far longer than I realized? Was it more than just a single night? Running a weary hand over my face, I exhaled sharply. "What am I supposed to do?" Flynn didn't hesitate. "You hire a professional," he said without missing a beat. "A private investigator. Someone who can get to the bottom of this and bring you the full truth. That way, when the time comes, there's no room for lies, no way to twist the facts. You'll have everything in front of you." That night, Sophia didn't come home until after 10. I remained seated at the dining table, motionless, staring at the meal that had long since gone cold. The candles had burned low, their wax congealing into hardened drips, their flickering light casting jagged shadows across untouched plates. This wasn't how I had envisioned the evening. In my mind, things had played out so differently. Instead, she stepped inside, letting out an exaggerated sigh as she dropped her bag by the door. Running a hand through her hair, she wore the kind of exhaustion that seemed too deliberate, her expression shifting into a practiced look of regret. "Babe, I'm so sorry," she murmured, her voice heavy with artificial remorse. "Work was insane today. They pushed the deadline up at the last minute. I had no choice but to stay. I hated missing tonight." I said nothing, just watched her. It was too smooth, too polished, every word falling into place like a script she had rehearsed 100 times before. The woman I had built a life with was standing before me, feeding me a lie without the slightest hesitation. Swallowing the bitter knot of anger tightening in my throat, I forced a nod. "I get it," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Work can be unpredictable." She stepped closer, pressing a soft kiss against my cheek. I wanted to recoil, to pull away from the weight of her deception, but I didn't. Instead, I managed a measured smile and gestured toward the untouched meal. "I saved you a plate," I offered. She shook her head, feigning exhaustion. "Too tired to eat," she said. Another lie. That night, while she slept soundly beside me, I made my decision. By morning, I had reached out to a private investigator and set up a meeting. If my marriage was crumbling, I needed to know just how deep the cracks ran. For the next month, I played the part, maintaining the illusion of normalcy while the investigator worked. It was an exhausting act. Waking up beside Sophia, sitting through breakfast conversations, listening to her talk about her day, all the while knowing she was slipping away to be with someone else. The investigator worked quickly. Within 2 weeks, he had already gathered an overwhelming amount of evidence. Photos, videos, time-stamped records, proof that left no room for doubt. Sophia wasn't meeting up with a stranger. She was seeing a man she had casually introduced to me before, brushing him off as just a colleague. But this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It wasn't a single mistake. Their meetings weren't confined to hotels. They met in bars, restaurants, cozy cafes tucked away from prying eyes, parking lots, where they sat together in her car for hours, each rendezvous planned with meticulous care. Then came the final, crushing blow. He wasn't just some colleague, he was married too. His wife, completely unaware, was at home, caring for their family, oblivious to the betrayal unfolding behind her back. The irony was sickening. Two people, deceiving the ones who had trusted them most, weaving elaborate lies to protect their own selfish desires. By the time the investigator handed me the final report, I had everything I needed. Irrefutable proof, photographic evidence, video recordings, detailed logs of every meeting. I could have shattered their lives with a single move, exposed them for who they truly were. But I didn't. Sophia wasn't just an ordinary employee. She was a senior figure in her company, respected, admired. If this affair became public, it wouldn't just be a scandal, it would be catastrophic. The company had strict policies against workplace relationships, especially between higher-ups and their subordinates. If HR caught wind of this, it wouldn't just end in an awkward conversation, it could cost her everything: a demotion, termination, even legal consequences if the other man's wife decided to pursue action. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted control. I wanted a clean break. No drawn-out battles, no accusations hurled back and forth. With the evidence I had, I could dictate the terms. She would sign the divorce papers and leave quietly. And if she refused, then the truth would find its way into the right hands. That night, Sophia came home late again. Same routine, same tired excuses. She sighed dramatically, setting her bag down with a theatrical rub of her temples. "You wouldn't believe the day I had," she said, exhaustion dripping from her words. It was non-stop from morning till now. I didn't respond right away. I just watched her, letting the silence stretch between us. For weeks I had played along, nodding, smiling, pretending to believe her. Not tonight. "There's no need to keep pretending," I said at last, my voice calm but unwavering. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, quickly replaced by something else. Fear. Her gaze followed mine to the folder resting on the table. Beside it, a neat stack of papers. "What? What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes without wavering. "Your choices," I said evenly. "Sign the divorce papers, and we walk away from this clean. No mess, no drawn-out fights." My fingers tapped against the folder. Or, "I make sure the truth reaches exactly where it needs to go. I sent it to your company's HR, your colleagues, and your lover's wife." Her face drained of color. She didn't even need to open the folder in her hands. She already knew what was inside. A step backward, a slight shake of her head, as if putting distance between herself and the evidence, might somehow make it disappear. "Anthony, please. It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. "Just let me explain." I stayed silent. I had already heard enough lies. Her breaths came quicker, her hands unsteady as she finally lifted the cover. Photos, recordings, proof. The moment her eyes landed on them, the tears began to fall. "Please," she whispered, choking on her words. "It was a mistake, a stupid, meaningless mistake. I never wanted to lose you." I exhaled slowly, the predictability of it all nearly comical. "I still love you," she continued, stepping closer, her hands reaching for mine in a silent plea. "We can fix this. I'll end it. I'll do anything. Just don't do this." I looked down at her hands, then met her eyes before pulling away. "This isn't about love, Sophia," I said, my tone even, devoid of warmth. "It's about respect. And you lost mine." She stood frozen, her gaze shifting from me to the divorce papers on the table. The hesitation I saw wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about salvaging her career, her reputation, the carefully curated image she had built. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Sign them, Sophia," I said, "or we do this the hard way." Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she swallowed hard, wiped her tears, and picked up the pen. Her fingers trembled as she signed, each stroke of ink sealing the end of what we once were. When she finally set the pen down, She looked at me one last time, her eyes pleading. "You won't send this out?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "You'll keep it between us?" I nodded. "As long as you don't make this difficult." She bit her lip, considering her options, though she had none left. She had played the game and lost. And just like that, it was over. The woman I had once envisioned a lifetime with had become nothing more than a closed chapter. She couldn't twist the narrative, couldn't paint herself as the victim or me as the villain. She had no defense, and that was what stung the most. It wasn't just losing me, it was losing control. With a shaky breath, she wiped the last of her tears. "What do I tell people?" she finally asked. I shrugged. "That's your problem." She frowned, waiting for me to hand her an easy excuse, a digestible reason for why our so-called perfect marriage had shattered overnight. Maybe she hoped I'd say, "We just grew apart," or "We wanted different things." But I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Let her come up with a justification that didn't drag my name through the mud. And the best part? She couldn't lie, because if she did, I had the evidence to shut it down instantly. Looking back now, everything is clear. Sophia wasn't in love with me. She was in love with the stability, the status, the perception of what we had. She liked the idea of us, but not enough to honor it. That's the thing about betrayal. It rips away the illusion and forces you to confront the truth, whether you're ready or not. For a long time, I feared losing her would break me. But staying? That would have been the real loss. Staying would have meant living a lie, sacrificing my dignity, allowing someone else's choices to dictate my happiness. In the end, I walked away with something far more valuable than a marriage. I walked away with my peace. I didn't lose. I may have lost my wife, but I reclaimed my life. If there's one lesson to take from this, it's this. Trust your instincts. When something feels off, don't ignore it. The signs were always there, but I brushed them aside because I didn't want to believe the person I loved could betray me. But the truth doesn't wait for permission. It just waits for you to open your eyes. Pay attention to actions, not words. Words are cheap. People will say whatever they must to keep you in their grasp, just like Sophia did. But actions? That's where the truth lives. Most importantly, never let someone else's deceit trap you in a lie. I spent too much time trying to understand why. But at the end of the day, infidelity isn't a mistake, it's a choice. And I had a choice too, to stay and let it destroy me, or to walk away and rebuild. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, remember your worth. Don't beg for love, don't accept betrayal, and never stay where you aren't respected. You deserve better. Thanks for listening, stay strong, and always choose yourself. This story has come to an end. The pain of betrayal is inevitable, but remember, it's not your defeat, it's your chance for liberation. Loyalty, trust, and respect are the foundation of any relationship. When one partner destroys it with lies, it's not your fault. The key is not to cling to the one who betrayed you, but to choose yourself. Don't waste your energy on revenge. Walk away with dignity. Life is too short to live in deception. Remember, love should not be a battle for attention. Don't beg, don't prove your worth. If someone didn't choose you, you choose freedom. And that is the greatest victory. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. When a perfect marriage turns into a game of survival. He was a successful businessman, and she was the owner of a cozy cafe. 13 years together, trust, support, stability. But one day, he appeared in her life. A mysterious Serbian man with the charm of a romance novel hero. At first, it was just innocent conversations, then long walks, and then lies. When the husband realized he was losing not only his wife, but also his dignity, he decided to act. But how far would he go to regain control? Betrayal, revelation, revenge. Who will come out victorious in this game? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. My wife and I have shared 13 years of marriage. Before that, we spent just over a year dating, completely certain that we were soulmates. But lately, I've begun to wonder if that certainty was ever real. I have a steady career. Alongside my brothers, I co-own a jewelry business that we built from the ground up. What started as a modest endeavor has grown into a thriving and lucrative enterprise, something we take immense pride in. While many caution against mixing family with business, for us, it's been nothing but a success. We've always had a strong relationship, devoid of the usual sibling rivalries that often cause professional partnerships to crumble. Meanwhile, my wife pursued her own aspirations. She opened a quaint cafe where patrons could indulge in pastries, sip coffee, and immerse themselves in books. Books have always been a defining part of her identity. She's the kind of person who views literature as more than just a hobby. It's an integral piece of who she is. Before I met her, I found that level of enthusiasm a bit excessive, maybe even annoying. But over time, I learned to accept it. Call it hypocrisy if you want, but I genuinely wanted to see her succeed. I even helped pay the rent for her cafe, given its upscale location and steep costs. Covering that expense allowed her business to finally become profitable, and watching her thrive brought me joy. That's the backdrop. Now here's where things started to shift. At some point in March, she mentioned a new customer. She described him as incredibly handsome. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. We've always been comfortable talking about other people's looks without it causing tension. But something about how she spoke of him felt different. She likened him to the brooding, rugged heroes in her beloved romance novels. Yes, she's a fan of those kinds of stories. From what I've seen, many women obsessed with reading also gravitate toward those over-the-top, dramatic love stories. I've never understood the appeal, but if it makes her happy, I let it be. At first I dismissed it. But the way she described him, her choice of words, reminded me of the way she once gushed about a Russian assassin character from one of her books, a man who fell in love with a woman he met in their apartment complex's laundry room. No, I'm not making that up. That's the kind of story she finds compelling. That day, she only mentioned him in passing, but the very next evening, she brought him up again, saying they had talked for quite a while. From that conversation alone, I learned he was Serbian, had worked as a car dealer, and had recently moved to the US in search of better opportunities. He was struggling to settle in, but was trying to land a job at a local dealership. Within 10 minutes, I knew he was tall, blonde, well-dressed, spoke with an accent, and had a refined taste in books, particularly westerns and fantasy epics like The Lord of the Rings. My wife talks about her customers all the time, so initially, I chalked it up to her usual storytelling. But there was something about her tone. She wasn't just recounting an interaction. She was romanticizing it, almost as if she were turning this man into one of her fictional protagonists. Fortunately, the fascination seemed to fade, and she stopped bringing him up as frequently. That was a relief. He was just another regular at her cafe, not a main character in our nightly conversations. One afternoon, I even visited her cafe to drop off lunch and spotted a man in the corner who perfectly matched her description. There was no doubt in my mind, that was Peter. And then things started getting strange. One evening, she walked through the door wearing a dreamy, almost giddy expression. When I asked what had put her in such a good mood, she casually revealed that Peter had walked her home. They had spent the journey deep in conversation about books, and before parting ways, he had asked her out on a date. She told me she declined, explaining that she was married. According to her, Peter was immediately apologetic, took her hand in a gentlemanly way, wished her a good night, and left. I asked why that encounter had made her so happy. Her response? It felt like something straight out of a book. That irritated me. She was treating these interactions with Peter as though they were lifted from the pages of her favorite romance novels. Still, I tried to be rational. She had been upfront about his advances and had made it clear that she was married. If she wanted to, she could have easily lied about her marital status. So I pushed my unease aside, convincing myself there was no reason to overreact. Ignoring that feeling was a mistake. About a week later, she came home holding a bouquet of flowers and immediately placed them in a vase. When I asked where they came from, she nonchalantly admitted that Peter had given them to her. Nothing significant, just a small token of appreciation for all the support she had shown him while he was job hunting. That was when my patience snapped. She spoke as if she were completely oblivious to the implications of receiving flowers from a man who had already expressed interest in her. So I asked her outright. Did she not realize that Peter liked her? She admitted that, of course, she knew. After all, he had asked her out. But she insisted the flowers were just a kind gesture, nothing more. That was absolute nonsense. Any man with common sense knows that if you ask a woman out and she turns you down, you don't follow up with flowers unless you're still trying to win her over. It wasn't about a friendly gesture. He was testing boundaries, and given how effortlessly she was indulging him, I knew he wasn't going to stop anytime soon. I was right. 2 days later, she arrived home much later than usual. Almost 2 hours past the time she normally returned. She hadn't mentioned staying out late, which was already unusual. I called her twice. No answer. Instead of blowing up her phone, I chose to wait. And that's when everything truly began to fall apart. Just as I was about to call her for the third time, the door swung open, and she stepped in, practically buzzing with excitement. "You won't believe the night I had," she blurted out, immediately diving into a long-winded story. Apparently, she had guided Peter to the museum, and afterward, they grabbed a slice of American pizza, something he had always wanted to try after seeing it in movies. They spent the evening strolling through the city, talking, eating, and engaging in various activities I had no interest in hearing about. Still, I let her spill it all out. When she finally finished, I met her gaze and asked, "Are you attracted to Peter?" Her expression shifted instantly. Shock, maybe even offense. She denied it without hesitation, assuring me that I was the only person she had feelings for. She insisted she was just being kind, showing hospitality to someone in a foreign country with no friends or connections. Her reasoning made sense, but something about it didn't sit right with me. So, I made it clear, she needed to stop seeing him. That, of course, sparked a heated argument. She accused me of being insecure, said I was overreacting, and insisted I had no reason to feel threatened. She went on, but none of it eased my frustration. Even so, I kept my emotions in check. I didn't yell. I simply held my ground. I told her she could interact with Peter at the cafe since he was a customer, but beyond that, it had to end. To drive my point home, I asked how she'd feel if the situation were reversed. If a Serbian woman had come in to buy a bracelet, and I had decided to take her on a personal tour of the city. She dismissed the idea, claiming she'd understand, but we both knew that wasn't true. By the end of it, I found myself sleeping on the couch. No surprise there. The only silver lining? The topic of Peter seemed to vanish from our conversations, which did wonders for my peace of mind. I knew they'd still see each other at the cafe, but that was a controlled environment. As long as she continued coming home at her usual time every night, I chose to let it go. And for a while, things seemed normal, until one day, when I unexpectedly stopped by her cafe and she was nowhere to be found. Peter wasn't there either. That alone didn't prove anything, but her unexplained absence? That was a red flag. I debated whether to wait for her return or ask an employee where she had gone, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Instead, I headed back to my car across the street. Just as I was about to leave, I saw them. She and Peter were walking side by side, their arms intertwined. Every instinct screamed at me to confront them right then and there, to unleash all the anger boiling inside me. But somehow, I held back. I remained in my car, watching as they disappeared into the cafe. Then, I drove away. That was yesterday. Processing it has been torment. I wanted to confront her the moment she got home, but I forced myself to wait. There's an advantage in knowing something the other person doesn't realize you know. It allows you to see through their deception. So, I played it cool. When she walked through the door, I casually asked about her day. She recounted an uneventful work shift, making no mention of spending time with Peter. That was all the confirmation I needed. And that brings me to now. Should I confront her outright, or should I gather more evidence first? I'm leaning toward the latter. Something bigger is happening here, and if I act too soon, I might never uncover the full truth. Update. I found more than I ever wanted to. It took time to muster the courage, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, no matter how much it hurt. I had never been the kind of person to invade my partner's privacy, but I shoved aside my moral reservations. The truth mattered more. The first opportunity came while she was asleep. I took her phone and went straight to her messages. As expected, Peter's name was there. They had been talking non-stop on WhatsApp. I exported their entire chat to a text file and sent it to myself, making sure to erase any trace of what I had done. Then, I checked her gallery. There were several photos of them together, laughing in different locations across the city. Nothing blatantly incriminating, but enough to deepen my suspicions. I sent those to myself as well and deleted the evidence. It took less than 5 minutes to go through everything and put her phone back exactly as it was. Then, I picked up my own phone and started reading. If she had woken up and caught me, I would have come up with an excuse. But she didn't, and what I found made my stomach churn. One conversation stood out among the rest. They had been discussing a book my wife had recommended to Peter. For clarity, let's call her Miranda. Peter. The way the main characters remind me of us, Miranda. Miranda. Yes. That's exactly what I thought. The brooding, mysterious hunk and the artsy girl who's torn between him and her boyfriend. Peter. And passionate, intimate scenes. This part especially reminds me of us. Miranda. I agree. Intimacy is always good. Peter. Except in your case, it's a husband. Peter sent a laughing emoji. Miranda. Yes. And I think that's what makes it even more exciting and fun. Peter. It feels so wrong. I've never cheated before, but I can't say I properly regret it. Miranda. It is wrong, but that's what makes it so hot. Peter. Yep. And I never want this to end. Reading that sent a firestorm of rage through me. I had to leave the house before I did something reckless. I walked aimlessly through the streets, my mind racing, my vision blurring with the weight of betrayal. It felt like I had been wandering for hours. When I finally checked my phone, it was only 3 a.m. Now I know, and I have no idea what to do next. She was still sound asleep. Have you ever felt the gut-wrenching horror of realizing you've been deceived, only to discover that your partner is actually basking in her betrayal? It wasn't just the unfaithfulness that broke me. It was the sheer delight she took in keeping me oblivious. If she had shown even a shred of guilt, perhaps the sting would have been slightly less sharp. But the thrill she got from sneaking around, that was the final straw. When I got home that night, she was still lost in dreams, utterly unaware. I grabbed her phone and went straight to the damning part of her conversation with Peter, using her own device to record every incriminating message. I needed undeniable proof, something irrefutable. Miranda had deluded herself into thinking she was starring in some grand, forbidden love story, straight out of the novels she adored. But casting me as the clueless fool in her fantasy? That was a cruelty I wouldn't tolerate. She had no idea that her little game was over. The divorce was already in motion, and there was no turning back. And Peter? He wouldn't escape unscathed either. I didn't know exactly how I'd make him suffer yet, but I was determined that they'd both feel the kind of agony that cuts straight to the soul. Update. It's done. And it was magnificent. The final chapter of the adulterous Miranda and her Serbian lover has been written. They never realized they should have feared me far more than they did. Let's skip the mundane details. One morning, as Miranda went about her usual routine, I took an Uber and positioned myself across the street. From my spot, I had the perfect view as a process server waltzed into the cafe and handed her the divorce papers in front of everyone. Watching her face crumble in real time, absolutely priceless. I didn't wait around for the fallout. I had seen what I needed. I continued my day as if nothing had happened, enjoying my work and the refreshing silence that followed. No desperate calls, no pathetic attempts at reconciliation. That void of communication was a symphony to my ears. She knew she was caught. There was no way to undo it. At least, that's what I assumed. That night, she came home in pieces, mascara streaked, nose running, completely wrecked. For a brief second, I almost pitied her. Almost. Maybe some long-forgotten remnants of love stirred within me. But they faded as quickly as they came. Through sobs, she kept demanding answers. What had she done? Was this about Peter? That's when it hit me. She had no clue just how much I knew. She was fumbling in the dark, trying to assess the damage, wondering if she had left any loose ends. I considered exposing everything, but instead, I let her believe I had only seen them together once, strolling arm in arm. Her whole demeanor shifted. The begging became defensive, the pleading laced with veiled insults. She called me ridiculous for ending a marriage over something so minor. Sure, she admitted it was wrong to meet up with him, but insisted I was overreacting, jealous, insecure. She oscillated between groveling and gaslighting, unsure which would get her what she wanted. I made the decision easy for her. I told her to pack her things and leave, and she did. That was the official beginning of the divorce process, and let me tell you, it was exhilarating. I had more assets at risk, sure, but I also had the resources to secure top-tier legal counsel. If you ever find yourself in this situation, do yourself a favor. Hire the best lawyer money can buy. It's worth it. With the texts, the pictures, and the subtle confrontations I had previously staged about her behavior, my attorney built an ironclad case. But the real dagger? The financial records? Transactions from our shared account that lined up perfectly with messages where Peter gushed over gifts and fancy dinners. She had been using my money to fund her affair. My lawyer painted her as a scheming, opportunistic gold digger, and watching her squirm in court was a spectacle I thoroughly enjoyed. She tried to fight back, but there was nothing she could use against me. I wasn't flawless, but I was clean. By the time everything was settled, I walked away with everything I needed. I kept the house, I kept the car, and thanks to the undeniable proof of her infidelity, not to mention the fact that I had already helped her set up a business, there was no alimony. The judge saw right through her. The only thing she got to keep was the car I had originally gifted her. A small price to pay for my victory. Now, about Peter. Making him suffer was trickier, but I found my opportunity. One afternoon, I followed him as he left the cafe, tracking his steps down a quiet street. When the moment was right, I called his name. He turned, confused, and before he could react, I drove my fist into his jaw. The impact split his lip, sent him stumbling. It hurt like hell, but the satisfaction was worth every ounce of pain. He was too stunned to retaliate. Maybe he knew he had no justification, no moral ground to stand on. He simply got up and walked away. I wanted to do more, but anything beyond that would have invited legal trouble. Still, knowing he'd walk around with the mark of my fury, that was enough. Miranda's misery, however, was far from over. Remember the cafe I had been paying rent for? Well, the next payment loomed, and with its prime location, it wasn't cheap. When the deadline arrived, she called me, her voice trembling. She begged for help, pleaded for just one more favor. But I was done. I told her to sell her car if she needed money that badly, and hung up. The calls continued for days, each one met with silence. Eventually, she sold the car. I knew this because she called me just to curse me out. Apparently, I was the heartless one, the villain for abandoning her at her lowest. I simply reminded her of how thrilling she had found sneaking around. Her only response was silence. Now, I wait. If karma is real, she'll lose the cafe too. Without my financial support or my bookkeeper covering her mistakes, her failure is inevitable. Watching everything she built crumble has been the most gratifying part of all. And me? I'm standing strong, single, financially secure, and completely at peace. Don't get me wrong, the betrayal and divorce were brutal. But in the end, you either let the past consume you or you move forward. And that's exactly what I'm doing. To everyone who offered advice and support, you have no idea how much it meant. You helped me reclaim my life. This story has come to an end. Betrayal is not just infidelity. It is a blow that shatters trust and destroys years of shared life. In this story, we see how one reckless step can turn love into war and romantic fantasies into a real tragedy. But the most important thing is not the betrayal itself, but how you respond to it. You can break down, drown in resentment, or you can pull yourself together, gather evidence, and come out victorious. Do not let betrayal destroy you. Respect yourself, protect your boundaries, and remember, in the end, the truth is always stronger than the lie. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.